Good evening, everyone. Everybody's so awake. I love it. I figured we would choose a very easy, simple topic for tonight's talk. And as I normally like to start off with a question for you all. I want to get y'all's thoughts. If this will maybe advance to the next slide. We'll try again. Hang on. Maybe? No. Let's see. Yeah. We were having trouble with the projector earlier, so it might be. Let me escape out of this real quick. No, but the computer is thinking. While this loads, do we think that it's possible to love all of our brothers and sisters in Christ?
Possible?
Yeah.
Possible or doable?
Oh, that's a good distinction. I do like where you're going with that thinking. I guess, let's start with possible.
Yes.
Is it possible?
It's possible.
Yes. Okay. Is it doable?
What are we talking about exactly?
You remind me of a friend. We were talking about this, and I asked him, I said, what do you feel gets in the way? And he said, well, Lou, it would be very easy. My only problem are the people. If it weren't for the people, this would be so easy. I said, well, he's not wrong in a way, but okay, so we think it's possible, but what do we think gets in the way? Besides the people. Because it's certainly not us. It's everybody else, right? It's not ego, pride, what else? Lack of empathy, yep. What else? Just those three little things? So are we saying it's easy? Patience. Trust. Yeah, what else? Differences in general, for sure. Fear. Yeah. Fear is a big one. Fear of what exactly?
Other people, like their bias, their prejudice, their history, the things they've done.
Yeah. Maybe fear of getting hurt at times too, right? Anything else? You're right. That's a pretty long list. What was it? I heard something over here. Was it you, Richard? Ooh, understanding. Yeah. Which kind of goes along a little bit with the empathy piece, right? So is it fair to say it's possible, doable as in like we're capable of it, but there may be obstacles along the way? Is that kind of fair to say? Fair enough? Okay. So let's start with some of our references. We'll talk a little bit about a few passages in the Gospel according to Spiritism. We'll go over a question in the Spiritist book, and as I know you all have already heard from previous talks, we'll have a little bit of work in the Good News there, which was a book written by the medium Chico Xavier. And we'll talk a little bit about love kind of way back when, before Christ was really here on earth. What were some of the things, some of the perspective that he changed when it came to love? We'll go through and also define, right? Because love can mean a lot of different things to different people. So we'll talk about how Spiritism really defines what love is, and talk about what it means and how to put it into practice through Spiritism. And as always, we want to talk about some practical ways that we can really apply all of that to everyday life, because otherwise what good is really all of this knowledge and the reading and being able to quote all of the different questions and passages in the gospel and the Bible if we can't really put it into practice, right? So our goal for tonight will be to kind of go through all of that, but also walk away with some practical things that we can do on our daily lives. And so in the Good News, chapter 3 of that book talks about Jesus very early on coming to Jerusalem, and he was walking by a temple, and there were a few different folks there, some commoners from that area, a few different priests, and one of them, very intrigued by Jesus, he said, what are you doing here? What are you doing through Jerusalem? And Jesus said that he was seeking the foundation of the kingdom of God. And this individual, Haman, looked at him and said, very skeptical, going, well, what in the world do you even think that is? And Jesus talked about, the love that people have within their hearts and the ability to share that love. And Haman went on to say, but like, who really are you? Who do you think you are to be able to build that kingdom? Who's even going to help you? Right? And Jesus said, there will be many people from far and wide places that will come and help that. And Haman really took that in a very literal sense, right? So when Jesus said the kingdom of God, he really thought he was talking about a physical structure, right? A palace, something big. And looking at Jesus, dressed, very modestly, not really known in that area because he had just gotten to Jerusalem, he said, well, what do you even know about structures? Have you visited Rome, Athens? And Jesus said, well, I don't need any of that. I know about love and I know about trust. And that's all I need to be able to build that kingdom. And so tonight we'll talk about one of those pieces of the foundation that Jesus shared, which was the love piece. Yeah.
What book was that from?
From the Good News.
But do you remember what chapter in the Bible or what book in the Bible?
I don't remember exactly where in the Bible.
I had that other book at home. I'll look.
Yeah, I know it references the early stages before, like right when Jesus was putting out the request for the disciples to follow him. So it'll be kind of in the very early stages. Yeah, of course. So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 12, is fully dedicated to loving your enemies, what Jesus really meant when he said that, and some of the ways that we can put that into practice. So the first piece there we have from Matthew, and Jesus said, look, you've learned that you should love your neighbor and hate your enemies, but actually love your enemies and also do good to those who hate you and pray for those who persecute and malign you so that you may be children of your Father who is in heaven. So if we reflect on this here for a moment, it's really no surprise that Jesus was called a revolutionary, right? Because if we look back to the law of Moses, it was very cut and dry. You're going to love the people who are your friends, the people who are your family, the people who bring you joy. But everybody else, your enemies, you're going to hate them. And then comes this person who says, well, actually, you're supposed to love your enemies as well. So can you imagine if we struggle with that concept today? Can you imagine how people felt way back then? Not knowing who Jesus was, what his purpose here was, and, really having kind of that internal conflict and really thinking, this man is crazy, right? He's saying things that nobody has said before, and who am I to love my enemies? And so in the gospel, in Luke, we find, if you love only those who love you, what reward will you have? Since even sinners also love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, what reward will you have? Since even sinners do the same thing. But as for you, love your enemies, do good to all, and lend without expecting anything. And then your reward will be very great, and you'll be the children of the Most High. Who is good to ingrates to the people who are ungrateful, and even the wicked. Thus be full of mercy, just as your God is full of mercy. And so what Jesus is really telling us here, right, is to love the people who are kind and loving to us is very easy, right? There's not really a whole lot of merit in that, because if I have someone who is kind, loving, gentle, makes it really easy for me to do those exact same things right back to that person. But the challenge, the merit, the importance here, what Jesus is calling us to do is to do that to everybody. Because even if the sinners, right, even if the people who perhaps are out there doing bad things, even they have the ability of loving the ones who love them, we're kind of in the same playing field. Is that fair? Does that make sense? So the call here, right, is to go beyond that. Is to say, look, yeah, y'all have mastered loving the people that you love because that's easy, but the true challenge here is to go a step further and love the people who are challenging, the ones who are impatient, the ones who make us want to pull our hairs. And so if we go on here, in this section, I find this really cool because one of the things that the Spirit's added on to this passage in Matthew and Luke is the Spirit said, love presupposes trust, right? So we're saying that in order for love to happen, trust needs to happen first. And we could not trust someone who we know means us harm. We could not have the same effusion of friendship with such a person, knowing that he or she is capable of abusing it. So what the spirits are telling us here is, look, we need to be able to define what we really mean when we're saying love. And the spirits even go as far as to say that our vocabulary is so basic that we just kind of look at it as love meaning everything and being the same to everybody. But what the spirits will go on to say here is that the sentiment that comes from a physical law, which is the law of assimilation and repulsion of fluids. And they go on to explain that a malevolent thought emits a fluidic current whose impression is painful, whereas a benevolent one puts us in a very pleasant state. So what the spirits are telling us is, look, when we say love your enemies, we're not saying that the people who we love and cherish and bring us warmth, that they're going to live in the same exact place that those enemies are going to live, right? We're saying that we're acknowledging here that, look, in order for love to happen, trust needs to come first. But how can you trust someone who you know means you harm? Someone who you know, right, is someone who's capable of abusing that trust, someone that you can't really trust, right? So what the spirits are telling us here is, hey, there's something that needs to come before that love there. And actually the feelings, right? So this kind of brings the scientific aspect of spiritism, which is what they're saying there is actually from a physical standpoint, there's actually a different feeling and a different manifestation that happens inside us when we think of individuals whom we love and cherish versus the ones that we struggle with. And think about it. If you know that you're going to go somewhere, maybe it's a family get-together, and there's always that one family member that we struggle with, right? Because every family has it. Every family does. I know mine does, but every family has it. And usually if we think that our family doesn't have it, we might be the one in the family. But the reality is every family has it, right? But this isn't just necessarily family. Maybe it's a work get-together, right? There always going to be people in our lives that we get along very well and we love, and there's that, kind of natural inclination to get together and we feel those vibrations and we know it's different, right? Compared to when we know we're going to see someone that challenges us, someone that we don't get along with very well. What do those feelings look like? Are they the same feelings? No, right? And that's exactly what the spirits are telling us there is, look, we can't ask you to have that same kind of love because even physically, those feelings that we go through, they're going to be drastically different. And as we continue on in the Spirit's book in question 887, it says, Jesus also taught, love even your enemies. And the question was, but isn't loving our enemies kind of contrary to our natural tendencies? And doesn't that enmity proceed from a lack of sympathy between spirits? And the answer that the spirits gave us is, it is obviously not possible to show tender and passionate love towards one's enemies. And that is not what Jesus wanted to say. Loving one's enemies means to forgive them and to return good for their evil. That is how we put ourselves above them. By seeking vengeance, we only place ourselves beneath them. Right? So no part of this here says that we're going to hold those people in the same place. Right? But it is talking about, it's defining what Jesus meant when he said to love your enemies. And this next part here is probably my favorite part in this entire chapter. Because if you needed a rule book, so to speak, or a recipe to talk about how, kind of expand on that and really go further into what the spirits are complementing what Jesus is saying, is the spirits added, the love your enemies really means holding neither hatred, rancor, nor desires for vengeance against them. Right? So at a minimum, if we don't harbor, if we don't ruminate on those negative feelings, and we don't want vengeance against them, that's a really big start. And they go on to say, it also means forgiving them unconditionally and without ulterior motives for the evil they have caused us. And notice the unconditionally and the without ulterior motives, right? It's not that, well, I'm going to forgive because I'm going to be the biggest person. It's not that, well, I'm going to forgive so I can tell them that I've forgiven them, right? It's not that, right? It's truly that self-denial and the genuine desire to forgive and let go of those negative feelings. And then the other piece there, it means not setting up any obstacles to reconciliation. So if somebody reaches out and they're trying to make amends, it's not the building up of all of the excuses. It's not avoiding that person. It's providing the opportunity to reconciliate, right? Because we all make mistakes. And if someone has come to their senses, so to speak, right, and they're willing to reach out, it's also important for us to be able to provide them with that opportunity to seek the forgiveness and not get in the way, not put up any obstacles, right? Not to say, oh, you know what, I can't meet up today. Actually, I have to take my pet unicorn to the vet, right? Not making up the excuses, but providing them with the opportunity there. And then the other piece in there is they said, it also means wanting the good for them instead of wishing them evil. It means rejoicing instead of despairing for the good that reaches them. So what we're saying here, right, is not wanting bad things to happen is also not enough. The spirits are going further to say we should want the good to happen to them. Right? We should be happy when those good things do happen to them. And further along, they go on to add, it also means extending to them a helping hand in case of necessity. It means abstaining either in word or act from anything that might harm them.
It doesn't happen all at once, right?
It does not happen all at once. And it's a cycle, right? So here's the other thing too. And it's important for us to recognize, which we're going to get to this in a little bit here, but it's important to remind ourselves that we are all here incarnated on earth, which we know is a planet of trials and expiations, right? We're here to evolve, which means we're not evolved yet. And therefore, that same love that we want to extend to those people, we need to extend it to ourselves first and have that compassion that we were talking about, that empathy that we want to put out to other people. We need to have it with ourselves and realize that this all, like you said, it may not happen at once. It may not all even happen in this life, right? But any little bit, any improvement, any effort that we put into it, we're going to be much, much closer. And notice that last piece there, finally, it means repaying their evil with good and everything with no intention of humiliating them. And that's also a big one. Who has heard of the phrase, kill them with kindness? It's kind of an interesting one, right? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like the word kill and kindness don't normally go in the same sentence. And usually when that's brought up, right? Not always, but usually when that's brought up is this idea that I'm going to be so kind, but so kind that it's going to drive them nuts. That's not the intent, right? And that's kind of what the Spirit's meant there with the humiliation piece. It's repay the evil with good, with the kindness, with all of the positive things that are out there, was simply the intent to be good, to be kind, and to wish them well. Not because we want to show that we're the biggest person, not because we want so-and-so to look like a fool, right? Our intentions have to be in the right place for all of that right there to happen. And the last piece here is kind of the bow on top. Whoever does this fulfills the conditions of the commandment, love your enemies. So if we go back real quick to that initial question that we had, is it doable to do these things? Does it feel more doable than it did when we just said, love your enemies?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the previous slide, you talked about physical repulsion, and that it doesn't mean that you are necessarily meeting them around or are necessarily tolerating them around you in your space, because you're on different vibrations or whatever the case. But then when you cannot set up an obstacle to reconciliate, that doesn't mean like I can reconciliate with you, but it doesn't mean that I still feel safe in your space. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we'll see that a little bit later on, but notice that none of this, right, says invite your enemies for a barbecue every Sunday and sit next to them and eat cake, right? None of this really requires that physical proximity, because there may be individuals in our lives, right, where we might have tried all of this, but it's two people, right? And so two people need to want the same thing, but we are responsible for our share of what we can do, right? And all of this right here can be done from afar. And even if, and there are several chapters in the gospel that talk about this as well, is even when we do reconciliate, even when we do forgive, it does not mean that individual may be a part of our lives, right? Because no matter the good intentions, no matter our willingness to practice all of this, if there's no reciprocity, right? Or if we have tried everything that we can and we're still running into challenges, it doesn't mean that we're going to continue to suffer, to continue to put ourselves in a position where we will continue to get hurt. But that also doesn't mean that because we were getting hurt, we're going to wish that person, bad things, and we're going to wish all of the negative things, right? We can do all of these things right here, and we can do our part, we can do our share, but there are moments in our lives, right, where there are individuals that we simply can't, it's not good for our well-being, for our mental health sometimes, right? And sometimes that space is what's necessary. But through prayer, I can continue to wish them well. I can continue to pray that their heart be transformed, right? So I can do all of these things right here without continuing to get hurt. And if it is a relationship, whatever that relationship might be, right? Because we hear oftentimes it could be between parents and their kids. It could be, past relationships, husband, wife, whatever the case may be, where that reconciliation where we all sit together at a table may not be possible. But the key is, are we doing our part? And if we are, even if we're not able to sit at a table together, that's still improvement, right? All of these things right here still showcase evolving. Does that kind of help? Does that answer the question?
Yes and no.
Tell me the no part. We'll try to break it down.
I'm just having trouble understanding, like, in the previous slide, I don't know if it's the previous or the previous, where the spirits talk about you have to trust to love.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody, even if you forgive your enemy or friend of harm, you still don't feel safe around them, then necessarily means I don't love them, right? Like, even though I'm willing to forgive them, but because the trust is not there, the love doesn't naturally come.
I see what you're saying. So that part is in kind of the breakdown and definition of how we see love, right? So what the spirits are, the part that talks about the trust needing to come before, that's the love that we feel, the compassion, the people that we truly feel the love within us. So we're talking about, maybe those family members, those friends that we do have the trust. And because of that, we have built those positive feelings that get associated when we're near that person, when we think about that person. And so what the spirits are telling us is, look, when that trust doesn't exist, right, the love can exist, but it's going to be a different kind of love. It's not going to be the same one that produce those positive feelings. Does that help? So essentially the trust is kind of the key component to how we're defining love. And we're breaking love from being, the people I cherish, the people who warm my heart. Those I trust, those I can be myself, I can count on them, I can confide in them. And because of that love comes naturally. And those feelings, right, they're the positive feelings. Versus when the trust isn't there, well, it's not that I can't love, but that love looks different, right? It's not going to put out those same feelings. I won't feel the same exact way, but I can love in a different way, which would be the love through here. Does that help? Cool. Good question. And so if we continue on, I think it's important that we kind of come back to the whole purpose, right? And we talk about this question a lot because when we're going through, the requests of how to love the enemy, we kind of have to have that perspective of why we're really here, right? Because otherwise, why am I going to wish those people well? Why am I going to be patient? If it all ends here, I'm going to have the last word. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, right? But the reincarnation is the piece that goes, well, hold on a second. You're kind of just looking at this one incarnation right here, but there is so much more. So zoom out and look at everything else. And so the purpose, right, of us being here is the idea that incarnation is really for the purpose of leading spirits to perfection, which again, we're going to run into those challenges and have those people that try us because they're also not evolved just the same way that we're not, right? We're here kind of in that process there. And so in order to reach that perfection there, we do have to go through those vicissitudes, those trials, and that's really where the expiation lies. And so the reason why I kind of bring us back to that is because in this chapter, it also talks about the discarnate enemies, right? So there are the people who are here that we struggle with, and they're like the kids who enter an elevator and push all the buttons. They know how to push all of our buttons, but it doesn't end there, which is why that thought, right, and the perspective of the fact that we are eternal beings and the process of evolving, understanding that it's a long process, it also puts into perspective that we should practice all those things that we talked about because guess what? We're not getting rid of people in this life. And that's what kind of this portion of the chapter focuses on here. It says, One can therefore have enemies among both incarnates and discarnates, right? So people who are physically here and people who have already passed and will come back and vice versa. The enemies of the invisible world express their malevolence through the obsessions and subjugations of which so many persons are the target, and which are one variety of one's life's trials. And then they go on to add, love your enemies is not limited to the narrow circle of the earth and the present life, but is part of the great law of universal solidarity and fraternity. So kind of thinking about this a little bit, right? As we're here and we have the opportunity to engage with those people that we could consider in this case enemies because they're people that we have issues with, we're working through, trials. There's a ton of benefit in getting all of that solved here, right? And I like to joke with people sometimes, if anything, do it out of your own goodwill, because do you really want to come back with those people? Right? Don't you want to solve it here now? It's kind of like you're going through high school, college, whatever the case may be. Don't you want to pass the first time? Right? That's kind of the callback there is we're not just talking about people who are currently here today in the physical world, because if we don't have the opportunity to fix it here, right, who knows how much longer it's going to be until we have the opportunity to be able to course correct things again. And so really we have to have, that full perspective of it really doesn't end here. So I have every reason to put in practice all those things that we talked about to be able to solve everything here, or at least, right, make as many strides as I possibly can to be as close as I possibly can there. And the next piece here is kind of that eye for an eye mentality, right? Which again, going back to the days of the law of Moses, it was really, hey, if people do a thing, you do it right back to them. And what Jesus said was, I'm telling you not to resist the evil that others might want to do to you, but if someone strikes your right cheek, offer him the other also. And if someone wants to force you to go 1,000 steps with them, go 2,000. And I really love how Spiritism breaks this down, because if we were to take this in its very literal sense, hold on a second, you're telling me that if somebody hits me in the face, I should go, that was really nice, do you want to do the other side? That's kind of crazy.
That makes more sense.
Right, it does, right? And again, right, no wonder when Jesus walked the earth, people thought, this guy, he is crazy. What do you mean? This is a complete shift from everything that we've been doing thus far. And I love this part of the gospel that says, to the proud, this maxim seems like cowardice, because they don't understand that there is more courage in bearing an offense than in avenging oneself. By these words, Jesus did not interdict self-defense, but condemned vengeance, right? So what we're saying here is what the spirits are telling us. It's if there's an offense, it's not that we don't have the ability of defending ourselves, but we're not going to seek revenge, right? If somebody strikes us, what is more important? Is it having the last word and being the individual who stood up and told that person like it is? Or is it practicing all of the things that we learn?
20 years ago was the first one.
Yeah, and sometimes it still is, right? Because I would love to be able to tell you that every single time I am challenged with some of these things, I would love to tell you that every single time I go, give the other cheek, just don't say anything, right? But that's not the reality. But I will say, right, that probably a solid 15 years or so ago, oh, I would ruminate. I would play that conversation in my head and think about all the 5 different ways that I could have answered that. And does it happen sometimes? Yeah, it still does. Because again, we're not perfect. We're going to have those moments where some individuals will push the buttons and it'll trigger something and it'll frustrate us. It'll make us want to, answer things in a way that we can say that we won that argument. But what's really winning an argument? Right? What's really in it for us? Bragging rights that end here. Right? That's the challenge, is we get the bragging rights, but at times it's at the cost of our health, right? Because we get all worked up for no reason. It might be at the cost of maybe a friendship, right? So it might be at the cost of a relationship. It might be at the cost of perception, right? Maybe now people don't even feel comfortable having those tough conversations with us because they don't think that we can handle it. But again, that piece there of the cowardice, we're not being cowards. We're simply choose to put the value on what means the most. What do I care about? Is it having the last word here on earth in this one life about something that oftentimes doesn't even matter? Or is it getting the opportunity to practice all of the things that Jesus taught us? Right? So in those moments, which Al, as you read the message, you kind of talked about, what are some of the ways that, we kind of pause, reflect, don't make rash decisions, right? Oftentimes it's maybe just walking away from that conversation. But the takeaway here is what Jesus is saying, look, yes, if you have to defend yourself, yes, defend yourself, but it doesn't have to be done in such a way that we humiliate people, right? That we approach it with malice, and it doesn't have to be in a way that harms the other person. That it is much better to be the one who is defeated at times or deceived, to be the one who's deceitful against somebody else. It is better to be hurt than to be the ones causing that hurt. Does that make sense? Does that kind of track? It helps when we kind of go away from the literal piece a little bit, right? But we do have to remember that back then, Jesus was already telling people to do something crazy out of the ordinary, so it was much easier to go through the parables there. And so, to kind of wrap things up, we'll talk a little bit about the everyday life, right? So we know what we need to do, but how do we kind of go through and apply that? And the first piece there, and you'll notice that a lot of these are going to be very similar from other talks, because truly the recipe is there. It's about how we decide to apply it and how much effort we put in there. But the first piece is study Spiritism, because it puts a lot of things into perspective. The piece of reincarnation alone provides good enough reason to practice all of these things. Because if I know it doesn't end here, if I know that there are other lives, what's the point of me burning all of these bridges, of having the last word, of sticking it to the person, if I'm just going to carry that challenge on to a different life, right? So Spiritism will provide a lot of answers to the things that we deal with, the challenges that we encounter. The next piece here is the reflection. Not always easy, and certainly not easy in the heat of the moment, but the seeking of the commonalities and the virtues, right? So for those people that we struggle with, there's still always something positive about those individuals. Even if it's simply them showing the things that we need to get better at. So if I'm someone who's impatient and somebody comes and pushes my buttons, they're giving me an opportunity to put into practice what I'm trying to get better at, right? So, may not always feel that way, right? But all of those individuals who challenge us, who push us, who we struggle with, they're pointing out to us the areas that we need to get better at. Because if I'm someone who's patient and I have mastered that skill, it doesn't matter what that person does. It's not going to faze me. But until it causes me to lose my mind, they're shedding a light on an imperfection, on an area that I need to get better at. So if anything, they're doing me a favor. Might not seem like it in the moment, right? But again, that reflection piece and trying to see the good in that person. Because there's always at least one thing that we can hold on to and we can appreciate, but also be reminded, right, that assume the positive intent. Because too often we don't know what people are going through, the challenges that they're encountering, and it may feel like they're coming with hard feelings, negative emotions, but assuming that positive intent, right, providing the reflection and the ability for them to be imperfect, right, and recognize that we are all kind of working to be better, will help out there. And then the last piece is prayer, both for us and for others. For us to be more patient, to be more benevolent, indulgent towards those challenges there, but also to those people. And we're not saying I'm going to pray for so-and-so to be changed, but rather I'm going to pray for their hearts to be transformed, right? I'm going to pray that they find their way, that they find the love, the compassion, everything that Jesus taught us. And in the gospel, according to Spiritism, towards the very end, right, there's a group of different prayers on tons of different topics, and there is one specific in there for love your enemies, and it's a prayer that you can do thinking of those individuals that you struggle with, and I would highly recommend checking that out. And so to wrap us up here, this is the last piece. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong. I just make noise, basically, is what they're saying. If I give every single thing that I possess to the poor, and I give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but I don't have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, and always perseveres. Because love never fails. Does anybody know where this is from?
According to 13:13.
Oh my goodness, yes, it sure is. Yeah, starts from 13.1 to 13:13. Yeah, you got it. And so I think this is a really great summary, right? Because it does show us that it's possible. It's not saying that we're going to be able to practice everything right away in one single life. We're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to hug those enemies and we're going to invite them over for barbecue. That's not what we're saying. But there are ways that we can little by little get there. We can wish people well. We can pray for them. And yes, the feelings that we have for those individuals may look and feel very different than the ones who warm our hearts. But if we have the commitment to start putting these things into practice, day by day, week by week, reincarnation by reincarnation, we will eventually get to a point where the feelings that we have for those people will be exactly like the ones that we have for the ones that we do love and want to be near. So thank you. I appreciate your time and have a good night.